Sure. Yeah. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for coming. I think I know most of you, almost everybody, but my name is Audrey King. I'm the curator for the Elwood House Museum. Before we get into the lecture today, a couple of quick announcements for the Elwood House. We are currently decorating for the holidays. It's a full Christmas explosion over at the mansion right now. Holiday tours start in the middle of the month. They start on November 16th this year, which is a Wednesday. And they'll run through the second Sunday in December. Our event weekend, where you can do a self-guided tour, is the first weekend in December, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. That is the only time you can walk through the house by yourself and see the fully decorated house. We'll have live musicians in the rotunda. We'll have Santa here in the visitor center, and then we'll have some crafts and snacks in this portion of the building. So it's going to be a really fun weekend. The tickets for both the guided tours of the decorated house and the event weekend are on sale right now. So you can go on our website and find those. If you want to volunteer at the event, it's a really fun time to volunteer at the house. So find me after this is over and I can get you set up with volunteering for that. Last thing I wanted to say is that we have one more lecture left in this year's lineup. It is Picture Postcards, The Happy Invention. Catherine Hamilton Smith is the person who's giving that lecture. She is a Rhodes Scholar from Illinois Humanities, and we've had her as a speaker in this series before. It's been a few years, but we have really liked her presentation before, and we're excited to have her back. So that's on December 1st. It's going to be virtual. She's only doing lectures virtually right now. So we would love to have her in person, but she's not offering that option. The sign up for that will be available in the next week or so, and you can join us for the last one of the year. And then we'll release a new calendar in February and keep you up to date on that.
Thank you. Great, wonderful. So we're all here today to learn about the African American Oral History Project that is part of taking place at NIU, but also in collaboration with the DeKalb County History Center and our Arts in Action Project. So we have Drew Vandekriek here, who is the Director of Digital Scholarship at NIU, and then we're also going to have Dr. Stan Arnold, who is a professor of history at NIU. He has class today till 12:15, so he's going to join us through Zoom around 12:20 as soon as he can get into his office. But one of the reasons that we're sharing this information is because it is that collaboration and that partnership with some of our Arts in Action work. So Tammy Shered here is our community coordinator, and she has been doing some oral histories as well. In the Sycamore community, we've got, I think you've done like 8 or 9 so far. We're working on getting the transcriptions done. But this is something that we really feel is important. And I just want to share this with everyone before we jump into this, that sometimes as historians, we kind of assume that people know what we do. But our job really involves investigating the past by analyzing many different types of evidence to get a complete understanding as possible. So much like detective work, we're always seeing how different clues fit together. And that's something that we've noticed as an organization. Before I came, I looked to see how many oral histories we had in our collection, and there were over 200 hits. And I could tell you that one of them was with Nathan Thomas, who he belongs to the Israel of God's Church in Sycamore. His father was the bishop there, but everyone else was white and probably connected to agriculture in Sycamore only. I'm not saying that those stories are not important, but they're certainly not giving us a complete vision of what our local community history is. And that really is why this work is so important. We have also worked with the NIU's Latino Oral History Project. So again, we're doing all the things that we can to make sure that we're collecting as many stories as possible to get a better understanding of our community's history. So with that, I am going to introduce Drew.
Okay, so I'm supposed to stand here?
Wherever you want.
Okay. I'm going to say a few words, a very few words to kind of set the stage, talk a little bit about the history of the project, how it came to be, some of its characteristics, and the real substance of the presentation is I brought 3 clips from 3 of the interviews that we've done. They're all in a video format, but 2 of them were with people that wanted to do their interview in voice only. As you would probably think, over the course of the COVID pandemic, we were not able to do in-person oral history interviews, but there was this thing called Zoom. And we found that you could easily do an interview over Zoom if you could get the person whom you wanted to interview in front of a computer that had Zoom on it. And you could record that. Now, that's not the kind of video quality that you want to use in a documentary film or anything like that, but for our purposes, it was fine in that I would say most oral history projects for years have been done in recording a person's voice. And for the purposes of dissemination, the transcript made is easily as important as anything else. At NIU, we have some background doing things that have to do with history in a digital format on the web. I've been at NIU for 25 years. I have a PhD in history from the University of Virginia, which was one of the schools in the 90s. I fell over backwards into this and was lucky that started putting money into how can we learn about history, teach about history, think about history in a digital format on the web. And one of the big things that they emphasized there was putting primary sources on the web. Not too many years ago, in fact, when I started out in graduate school, you would, if you were going to write a seminar paper or you're going to write your dissertation, of course, you'd be thinking, what are my sources? And you generally would have to travel to various archives and things like that. I was in Virginia, and my dissertation was about stuff that was going on in Philadelphia. That's less than a day's trip. That's not so bad, but you still had to find a place to stay while you were there, and it was kind of a big deal. Now, 30 years later, there's a good deal of primary source data that you can find on the web. I would not tell a PhD student that you can do your whole dissertation based upon just what's on the web, because not nearly everything has been digitized. It costs a great deal of money. It takes very specific skills, and it takes a great deal of maintenance just to keep things online. I know that we generally think that things that are on the web are there for forever, and the things that we don't want to be on the web will definitely be there forever. But the things that we do want to be on the web, it takes a great deal of money to keep them there. So we have some background doing this. I came here, we did a series of grants, one about Lincoln, that was about Lincoln's years in this state, that is to say, prior to being president. And we looked about what was the context in which he lived, what did his life tell us about that antebellum American frontier context. And we did another one about Mark Twain, not so much about Samuel Clemens, the author, but about the area that he was most famous for, writing about the mid-19th century Mississippi Valley. We did a number of other things too. So we have some background doing this. I believe it was in 2019 at NIU, my dean, the dean of the libraries, that's where my job is based, noticed or had the thought, as a lot of people were in that summer, that we, like the DeKalb County History Center, were really lacking in a lot of African American history materials, we have the Regional History Center there, which its mandate is to collect historical documents for basically everything from the northern part of the state above Interstate 80. But Cook, not Cook County. And the situation was very much the same. We had very good documentation of agriculture, we had very good documentation of industry, we had documentation of various ethnic groups. Like we had some church records where it was all written in the Norwegian. But we were really just systematically lacking in American materials. My dean had been at NIU since 2017, and he had someone had mentioned to him that there was an organization on campus of people who were the first Black students, graduate students, faculty members, who really started taking part at Northern in numbers in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And some of these people were still on hand. And he said, well, we should really interview these people. And it's my job to say, with what money? But in 2019, we got over the hump with that. One of the first things that we did is we said, well, we really want to do two projects in one, and they really overlap perfectly. We want to do some institutional history. That is, people who were students at, faculty members at, otherwise work at NIU going back probably to the 60s, but also DeKalb County as a whole. And I can't remember just when we started teaming up on this. It was kind of shortly after we started doing this. It was probably about the time that the pandemic hit that we said, hey, we're kind of trying to do the same thing here. And the DeKalb County History Center has been very, very helpful in that they have ties to the county that I don't necessarily have. We have, to my knowledge right now, I have on hand in our archive, I believe 23. I think 15 are ones that were done by NIU, and I believe 8 were ones that were done by the DeKalb County History Center. I believe that Michelle mentioned this, but I want to make sure to cover this. This is the partnership between the NIU libraries, the NIU Department of History, the NIU Center for Black Studies, and the DeKalb County History Center. The NIU Department of History has been very, very helpful in that they have given its graduate students to do things like actually conduct the interviews. You will hear there was a graduate student, a master student in the tape that I'm going to play here. And those students have done all kinds of different things, doing the interviews, making the transcripts, putting on metadata, which is a big scary word, but it's basically you put metadata on the digital file the same way that you catalog. Who is in this clip? What was the date that it was done? Who was the person doing the interview? What is the name of the project to which it is attached? And you have to do that in a certain kind of file. And we have somebody in our building that knows how to do that, so the students get to learn how to do that kind of thing. I think that's about all that I have as far as the context goes. We're going to listen to 3 clips. One is of a woman who works at NIU and moved out here, I'd say shortly before the pandemic maybe, and she talks about her experiences she had. Prior to that, she had lived in Lisle and come out here to work. I believe that the second one is going to be a local pastor, Leroy Mitchell, who talks some about his life in addition to being early leader of, if not the founder of the Interview Chance program, which is a program that reaches out to students that show promise but may have come from a background in which they didn't get a whole lot of preparation or training for college. So he helped to build that, but he was also the founder of a local church, New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Is that the correct name? Yeah. And then the third one, I can't remember who that is, so we're just gonna have to find out. But if we could play that, what I do need to tell you is that in only one of these clips, you actually see video of a person speaking. In the other two clips, you just see what we saw on Zoom, which is a screen saying, here are the people that are taking part, and you can hear the person's voice. So if you have trouble understanding what the person is saying, just raise your hand and we can go through and parse it. The thing about Zoom is that the sound quality is not as good as it would be as if you were here watching a studio film. Because it's just what comes over the wire. So if you have trouble, please by all means let me know. This is the first time that I have done this kind of presentation, and I have no idea really how the sound is going to sound in a room this big. I have listened to it at my desk, but not in a room this big. So I'll go sit down, we can watch it. And by that time, Dr. Arnold may have made it back to his office.
Yep, he's already.
And we can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I guess you kind of already answered this, but how would you describe the DeKalb Sycamore community when you first arrived?
Definitely very open, and everyone was very helpful. I spent most of the time with students and on campus, and then the wellness center in Sycamore.
Okay. Was there anyone in particular who made you feel especially welcome? And I guess, did you feel welcome as a newcomer in general?
In the school, I would have to say the thing that made me feel more comfortable was I was able to see other women of color in higher positions than myself when I arrived. As far as the community, everything I hadn't run into any problems or I hadn't had any issues. It was just comfortable.
In what ways did you connect with your fellow Black community members?
I really haven't, because I generally don't separate. I go to all diverse places. I don't single out things.
Have you felt like you've been able to create a community of your own with the Black population so far, or do you think that could still use some work?
I haven't really, it's not something that I seek out. I'm in an interracial relationship. My son is mixed. So I kind of get along with all. So I try not to separate and try to keep everyone and create my own type of a situation. where everyone feels welcome.
Right. I agree 100%. That's important to make everyone feel welcome. Have you ever experienced any discrimination in the community?
Well, during the, I would say about 4 years ago, the only discrimination that I can really recall to myself was, we received, Klan recruitment mail in our mailbox. That was kind of disturbing.
Was it like threats or you said it was just for recruiting?
Yes, they were doing recruitment. So they mailed it out from wherever and supposedly it happened in our mailbox.
No, hearing.
And there was a bullet in our driveway that did not belong to a gun that we owned.
Oh, wow.
Other than that, it's been fun.
Now, were there any instances where you, which were framed as a?
Not-
community?
Not based on my race. And I think most of that is due to the fact that my dad hunted with most of the cops in Sycamore, like they were hunters, like, their gun, they carry a gun for a profession and they're using one for recreation. And so, there were several times I got pulled over. Like one time I got pulled over by a cop and he said, you were doing 10 miles over, or 5 miles over. Like I was doing like 35 and a 25, and I didn't come to a complete stop. I'm like telling on myself with this interview, but so he pulled me over and he goes, oh, you're Roscoe's daughter. And he's like, okay, well, slow down. So, there were, and then I went to nursing school and I worked in the ER. And so like police, firefighters, paramedics, and they would come through the local ER and like they either knew my dad or they knew me as a nurse. So I felt like I was, I strategically put myself in, tried to put myself in situations to know the people that I needed to know to not feel uncomfortable. That makes sense.
Yeah, yes,
And
it does.
Yeah, and I learned that from my parents. Looking back, that you're like, no one should have to do that.
Right.
No one should have to work that hard to make sure that they're we always like,
Yeah, well, yeah.
be on the
I'm on my
honor
way to the
focus,
office, but I mean,
like you have to be perfect because my dad said you have to work 3 times harder than everyone else. We're a minority religion.
we was just talking about, I mean, everybody wishing on
Harder than
harm.
everyone. You can't make a mistake because it will. Other people can get away with it, but you won't. So, there was just this pressure to always be a high achiever. And I think that was a protection in a lot of ways, but
Wow, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What were your duties
Okay.
as Chance director? Could you tell us, talk a little about that?
Sure, I had the greatest job on campus. I was really,
You have to get it going. But I see, I be,
and he looked at me like I was crazy.
yeah, that's the kind of war and catch up for us kids.
Really does not know
Okay,
how
let
to
me look
respond.
at what's going
I
on.
was working in what was called the EOP, an Educational Opportunity Program. And this one was funded by the university. Most universities have programs where they expect money from the state or the feds. Northern funded
Okay.
this operation entirely on its own. And that was really great because it allowed us to do some things that the state and the fed programs would not allow.
Hey, hold on.
We were bringing 500 disadvantaged kids every year from poor sections.
I'm not getting a whole lot from this, are you?
We were provided staff.
No, I mean, I'm not in that room.
They graduate. I still thought that it has changed drastically than what happened. It was an unbelievable opportunity. Many young people took it from the opportunity. Many did not. Many were so far behind that this was really too much to catch up with and move ahead. But there were many who took full advantage of it and went on and did. We have graduates who are PhDs, we have them as FDs, we have them as DPS, we have them as JDs, we have teachers, you name them, we have them.
Wow, what were some of
One unbelievable gentleman is a professor at Yale in environmental biology.
wow, that's
Came to this program, he could not get into the university, his grades were horrible, but it was obvious that he had a brain in his head, so we took him, and he just took off.
Could you discuss a little about the founding of your church?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but I have been called in 1986 to pastor the North Avenue Baptist Church. There were two churches in Sycamore, North Avenue Baptist and the larger, more affluent Israel God Church. North Avenue Baptist held about 50 people, and that's probably stretching it. And that's where my first ministry, my first pastor was at North Avenue Baptist. There was some conflicts, and I wasn't aware of it, but I became aware of it. And eventually, those people from DeKalb were put out of the church. And not aware of what to do. I was never covered in seminary. We were standing in front of the church. There was a sign on the door. First Sunday in July 1987 with 4 points. Never forget it as long as I live. First one is Leroy Mitchell is no longer pastor. Number two, the locks have been changed. Number three, those who are not residents of Sycamore are no longer members. And number four, no service until further notice. And there was a bunch of us there reading the sign. I probably 2 million times. And I just decided I'm going home. It was hot. I said, I don't need to be bothered with this. And the guy here was watching some game, and one of my kids said, Daddy, look, and I looked down the driveway, and everyone who was on the sidewalk with me was coming at my driveway. So I thought, oh God, there's been a problem. I went to the door, find out what was happening. One of the men said, the city prepared a sermon. He's come to hear it. And that was the beginning of New Hope Missionary Baptist Church.
Dr. Agram, do you want to unmute and jump in and talk about, your part of the project here? Drew gave us a nice introduction and overview, and we just finished listening to the 3 clips. So if you're ready to jump in, we're anxious to hear you.
Yeah, I've been working
Oh, hold on a second. We can't hear you. Hold on. Let's see.
can you hear me now?
You making a house? No,
Hello?
it does.
Yeah.
No, it's asking for the option to mute.
Well,
Well,
I'm asking him if he has his mind.
okay.
I,
Dan, can you check to see if you have your microphone on?
Sure.
Thank you. Still can't hear you though.
Close this.
Try again.
No.
You want to maybe disconnect and then try logging in again? Thank you.
Should we have someone else try to speak? See if we can hear them.
I can fill in a couple of the things that I think Stan might say
Okay.
while we're trying to
Let's see.
fix this. Stan is a faculty member in the history department, and one of the things for which he is responsible is the oral history program. It's a definite skill. There are things that we need to learn how to document this kind of work properly and things like that. And a project like this gives his students an opportunity to actually do this in a real project. It gives them something if they go out to look for a job in history field. It's a little bit have experience doing this.
Can you hear me?
Doing this kind of thing. I had students who would work on the project for class credit. So it becomes a part